Hi guys, Matchlick from ZapChain, and I'm here with Adrian Macneil, Engineering Manager at Coinbase.
Hi.
Thank you for being here and helping us with the Bitcoin course.
Thanks.
This is going to be good. So Bitcoin can be super complicated, and we're just trying to help everybody understand, and you probably have a lot of good insights.
Awesome. Yeah, I learned a bit.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Coinbase for anyone that doesn't know.
Right, so Coinbase is a Bitcoin company. We're probably one of the largest companies in the Bitcoin space right now. We have sort of two sides to our business. One side is the consumer side, so we've got Bitcoin wallets. You can sign up, create an account. We're sort of like a bank for Bitcoin. The other side we have is the merchant side, which is allowing people to accept Bitcoin payments and then instantly convert those back into US dollars or whatever currency they're working with. So yeah, on the merchant side, obviously, avoiding the risk of currency fluctuations there.
Right.
And on the consumer side, just making it easy for people to use Bitcoin.
Right, and then you guys have raised like over $30 million.
Yes.
Like you've been around for 2 years, you have over 40 employees. Like you really are one of the fastest growing Bitcoin companies right now.
Yeah, definitely one of the more serious Bitcoin companies. There's been a few come and go, but
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, we're going to be the best one.
Well, and you're continuing to go up and to the right. So how did you initially get into Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I heard about Bitcoin a few years ago. A friend of mine was really into it and was telling me about this Bitcoin thing, and I thought, that'll never amount to anything.
Like you're crazy.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, it sounds like a cool idea, right? But
that's probably what all the people watching us are feeling.
Yeah,
right now.
Exactly. I think everyone goes through this sort of phase, these phases where first of all you hear about Bitcoin and you're like, I don't know, it's some internet money, like probably never work out. And then eventually you're like, I don't know, I keep hearing about this thing. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe I'll buy some. And there's kind of initially a lot of people just see it as an investment. And they're like, well, it's going up, so maybe I should buy some.
Right.
And that actually works out quite well because once you buy some, you realize how powerful this is. It's like now I have this currency that I can send to anyone anywhere in the world with low or no fees. So yeah, I sort of went through those stages. Mostly last year when it started getting in the news a lot, I really started looking into it more.
Right.
And that's when I was like, this thing is really powerful. I think, especially for me, I've moved around the world quite a lot and seen how difficult it is sending money, from one country to another is ridiculous. I usually resort to just taking money out of the ATM and losing like $30 plus 3% or something. So
which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
why you would
exactly,
have to do
right?
that.
It's like why can I not just send money from one country to the other? It's all just numbers flowing along a wire anyway, right? Why are the banks charging us these absurd rates? And also, that's just in like developed Western countries, but there's a lot of countries where they don't even have a bank account because the banks won't let them, or some things like this.
Right, or like their local currency isn't stable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I really saw the power there, I guess, and got into it.
Just got super excited.
Yeah.
And just like
I've got to do something with this Bitcoin.
Couldn't stop researching it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Bitcoin is really interesting because like there's no way you could say that you know everything about Bitcoin.
Right. No, I don't think anyone can. Even Satoshi, the creator, has probably never really realized that it was going to get this far or become this powerful. He might have had hopes, but
yeah. So for everyone that doesn't know, Satoshi Nakamoto is the guy that started Bitcoin.
Correct.
And he's anonymous.
Guy or group.
Guy or group or girl.
Girl.
And we have no idea who he is. And so those are the two things I think that makes Bitcoin so addicting. One, some guy named Satoshi Nakamoto or group started it. We don't know who he is.
Yeah.
When has that ever like happened? Like there's not any other figures like that. And then we don't know all the things we could do with it.
Yeah.
Like it's endless.
Yeah.
And super exciting. So how did you go from like learning about Bitcoin and then getting addicted to Bitcoin and then like not leaving your house because you're just reading about Bitcoin and developing things to actually working at Coinbase?
Yeah, so I guess once I sort of got my hands on some Bitcoin and started talking nonstop about it to my friends, I decided that I should probably get into this, and I was quite keen to start my own company. But at the same time, I was looking at moving to the States earlier this year and sort of realized like you can start. There's two ways to go. You can start a company, or you can get involved with a company that's already doing things, meet a whole bunch of great people, and build something that's bigger than yourself. So earlier this year I just said, all right, I need to get into this Bitcoin thing. So I was applied to Coinbase and went through the interview process and ended up here. So it was really quite smooth, I think. Yeah.
And you feel like it was the right decision?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still here.
What would you have started if you hadn't joined Coinbase?
I mean, I guess this is the exciting thing about Bitcoin, is there are a lot of different aspects of it that haven't been developed or explored yet. Some of them are definitely easier to start than others. So there's some things like, you could say ATMs, right? We could plaster the world in Bitcoin ATMs. But being the person who successfully starts that is probably going to be someone who's got contacts in the manufacturing industry, or possibly contacts with like a large chain of department stores or something, where you can sort of bootstrap this process and get your ATMs everywhere. There's a lot of other areas in the sort of Bitcoin API space that I was interested in, that I ended up working on here anyway. So
what are you working on? Like, what have you been working on since?
So I mean, we have a lot of just large-scale projects underway at any point in time. Most recently, we just spent the last few months non-stop pretty much working on our Europe launch. So that involved, dealing with, obviously, our business development folk had to go and talk to a bunch of banks in Europe and find a bank that was willing to work with us. There was a lot of work, on compliance to make sure that bank was happy with the processes we have in place. Once it got passed over to engineering, we had to work with, okay, how are we going to actually communicate with this bank? How are we going to know when someone transfers euros into Coinbase? So we had to build out all those processes, and when someone transfers money out of Coinbase, how do we then initiate that transaction? And then, most recently thinking about how can we launch Coinbase in different languages? Who is doing the translation? How do we deal with, formatting numbers and currencies and stuff in all of these languages? So the Europe launch was really, really interesting on a lot of fronts.
So how did you solve the languages problem?
So we're still working that out. We're currently looking at a combination of crowdsourcing, especially for less common languages, because you've got a platform here that is available to the entire world, and it would be nice to launch in 100 languages, right? But we can't possibly employ people full time to maintain those. So I think for the top worldwide languages, we will end up with full-time employees who handle with our support and our relationships in those countries, and also possibly maintaining our translations for Coinbase. In the sort of second tier of languages that are spoke, throughout the rest of the world, we'll just use a community platform where people who are interested can help maintain those.
What was the hardest part about preparing for Coinbase's European launch?
Just testing everything, I would say. It's really difficult when you're working with money to make sure that you're not losing a cent anywhere.
Right.
It's one thing building these kind of social services where, like, if someone posts a photo and it disappears the next day, it's like they might be a little bit upset, but like their friends just missed out on a chance to like their photo or something.
Right.
If someone sends us some money and we lose it, there's
then
like
they'll kill you.
That's not a good day for anyone.
Right.
So thoroughly testing every step of the way, making sure that and we had a beta program with a bunch of family and friends who we trusted not to leak our impending launch. Sending money into the system, sending money out of the system, buying and selling Bitcoin, and all of that. So yeah, that was probably the largest part of the whole process, was making sure that the system was bulletproof, so that when we launched, we could go out there and say, hey, Coinbase is available. And we honestly on the first day had no complaints or bugs in the system. So I think that was a pretty impressive milestone for us.
How was the response?
It was pretty good. We had a sort of a slow first day initially. I think especially we launched with a lot of US press, which was great for us, but we're sort of on the verge of doing a tour of European press and actually getting our name out there, because while a lot of people in the Bitcoin space in the US have heard of Coinbase, that's not necessarily the case internationally. So I think it's going to be like a process that will just slow and steady kind of win our way into Europe.
I feel like You're almost like Spotify, kind of, except like reverse.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Spotify
exactly.
came
You're
into the
successful
United
in one. Yeah, you're successful in one, particular country or region, and that can mean that you have a great product, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that the day you launch, you're going to be hugely successful in a new country.
Yeah, but then if you do a good job, with Spotify, nobody in the United States a couple years ago used Spotify or knew about it. But Spotify was still like a really big company in other countries. And then they came in here, they made a big deal, and then, people, I use Spotify every day now.
Yeah,
so hopefully that's probably...
hopefully we'll be as big as Spotify.
Yeah. That's what I think will happen. Yeah. So what else have you been working on at Coinbase?
So I guess I mentioned that I was really interested in the Bitcoin API space. I think people might be able to relate to companies like Stripe coming in. So for example, accepting credit cards used to be really difficult.
Right.
And they've got companies like PayPal that let you accept credit cards, but their API was terrible. It was like poorly documented, hard to use. And then companies like Stripe come in and just say, hey, like here's this super simple API. Just click here, sign up. Cool. Here's a example API key you can work with.
Right. And so for everyone watching, an API, what would be a really simple explanation of an API?
So the best explanation for API is it's a website for computers to talk to. I don't know. So for example, you go to a web page and you see some information, and you can read it obviously, and it's nicely laid out and there's pictures and stuff. An API is just that, except it's listed in a format that's easy for a computer to understand. So I guess it's like the spreadsheet equivalent. Everything's just like, here's an amount, here's how much I want to charge someone, here's like that person's email address, in a format that's easy for computers to understand.
Like it's almost like Legos a little bit.
Yeah. It's the building blocks. It's like here's a way to build on top of our application. So most companies these days, I guess, have an API which allows other people to build on top of that to make cool applications that we haven't even thought of.
Right. So I guess like an example most people could probably relate to where they've interacted with someone integrated in an API would be like if you log into, a website and you're logging in with Facebook,
right?
That website actually used Facebook's API to enable that.
Right. Yeah. So that website is talking to Facebook over their API. So they're just communicating with Facebook and saying, hey, I want this person to log in. And then you do your password, and then Facebook sends a message back saying, yes, that person was successful. It's really them.
Right. And so now, I think also most people probably don't realize this, and maybe when you say it, it sounds confusing because they don't understand APIs in the first place, but you can actually develop like products or technology with Bitcoin's API.
Yeah. I mean, so you can use, there's a couple aspects there, I guess. There's the Coinbase API, which specifically, Coinbase, you can create a wallet, you can create an account, and you can store some Bitcoin in it. You can send and receive that Bitcoin. You can buy and sell more Bitcoin. So Coinbase has an API which lets you build on top of that. So for example, our Android app uses that API. So when you log into the Android app and then you say, I want to buy 2 Bitcoin, it sends a message to Coinbase and says, hey, buy 2 Bitcoin on behalf of that person. But it's not just open to us, right? Anybody out there can build on top of Coinbase's API and say, hey, log in with your Coinbase account. Instead of log in with Facebook, it's log in with your Coinbase account.
Right.
And, maybe this website lets you do automatic trading or something. So if the price hits X, do a buy for me. Or if the price hits Y, then sell it.
Right.
And they could build that with our API rather than you having to click around our website.
Well, and without requiring you to build all these things.
Right, exactly, yeah. And so that leads into another project that that we've been working on that we just recently open sourced called Toshi. So Toshi is more of a lower level API into the Bitcoin space. So Bitcoin itself is made up of addresses and transactions, an address being kind of similar to a bank account that you have now. And a transaction obviously just being sending money from one address to another. As it is, most of the Bitcoin network is maintained by the original Bitcoin client, which was written by Satoshi back in 2009. But it's not particularly easy to work with if you're building a web service like ours. So we built a replacement. We basically rewrote that original client and put an API on top of it.
So you guys are you're basically Satoshi Nakamoto.
Well, we didn't come up with the idea, but
you're like the evolution.
Yeah. But so we rewrote that from scratch basically to solve our needs, which are making a software product for millions of people rather than just one running on their computer.
So if there are developers watching,
Yeah.
How could they use that? Like, what could they do with it?
Yeah, so right now, you could build all sorts of interesting applications, looking into the blockchain. The great thing about, so I guess I should take a step back and explain the blockchain. Basically, with the Bitcoin network, as I mentioned, you have an address, which is your particular sort of bank account number, which holds Bitcoin, right? And you can send money from that address to anyone else's address on the network. The way Bitcoin works is that every transaction on the network is completely public. The only thing that we don't know is who each address belongs to, and you can generate as many addresses as you want. So one user might have hundreds of addresses that they control, and you can see every transaction that's happening. You just can't tell who any one of these individual addresses belongs to.
Right.
So using an API like ours, or there's a few other APIs into the blockchain out there that exist, but most of them are hosted by another company.
Right.
There's only sort of a couple that have been released as open source, so that means that you can use our version of it, but you can install it yourself on your own computer if you want to.
Or we can make it better.
Right, or you can make it better. Yeah, and we're obviously going to continue to make it better as well. So using that API, right, you can look in and see all of these transactions which are happening. You can see, like, this address sent money to this address sent money to this address. And you can build all sorts of interesting tools to analyze that data to say, like, hey, this money moved through 3 people and ended up here. And you can see sort of how many transactions are happening in a day and these kinds of things. Where we're going more in the future is actually building for our own needs, which are maintaining collections of addresses to say, like, this is one user in our system.
Right.
So if you were going to build a Coinbase type website where you have users and they can deposit Bitcoin into your system, what you need to do there is keep track of, okay, this user has X number of Bitcoins, and when he wants to send them, he or she wants to send them, make a transaction and send it out onto the network. So in essence, I guess Toshi allows you to see all of the transactions that are happening on the network, be notified when any new ones happen, especially for one of your users or something, and also broadcast new transactions.
So using Toshi and the API, could someone make Coinbase?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's much more than sort of our low-level Bitcoin infrastructure that makes Coinbase, right? I mean, we have a great business development team. We have,
Right.
great recruiters. We have the team of great engineers. So there's much more to Coinbase than just this. And I think we want to encourage innovation. Like, we would love more people entering this space, because right now, Bitcoin itself is probably reaching 0.1% of its potential,
Right.
Globally, and it's not just all there for us to win, right? Like, there's tons of room for other companies to come in this space and build all sorts of interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what one of the most exciting things about Bitcoin is that most of the things that could be made, people haven't even thought of them yet.
Right, totally.
We just need more, like, anyone that understands Bitcoin, like, anyone that's watching this that loves Bitcoin, like, we just need to go out and tell everybody that we need more people making Bitcoin things, because there's a ton of opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin itself as a platform is just like a huge improvement over the current financial platform, right? So the current financial network is made up of mostly a few governments running a centralized system, which banks they allow can connect to. And then if you want to, be a part of that, you have to get approval from a bank, and they'll let you in with their crazy API that they wrote in the 80s or something. In Bitcoin, we've replaced that whole sort of fundamental infrastructure with, here's a decentralized system that's written for 2014, right? It's online, it's the internet, it's 24 hours a day, everything's instant. What hasn't been created yet is the layers on top of that. So there's all sorts of potential, I guess, in starting companies now which use this Bitcoin platform, which is inherently a massive improvement over the current one, but build all of these great things that we're used to in day-to-day life, like ATMs, like credit cards, like loans, and even point us out, right? I mean, you go and spend money these days, and you sign you swipe your credit card, and then you sign and maybe the person behind the till has like a little credit card reader and they stole your credit card ID, and next thing you've got to deal with the bank and all this stuff. Bitcoin provides a much better foundation for that whole platform, but the companies on top of it that are doing all these things don't exist yet. So there's a huge amount of potential there for basically anyone that's interested in starting a company to jump in and take any one of these particular sort of niches and get into them.
What are you what innovations are you most excited about seeing?
I think there's a huge amount of room in the point of sale space right now with Bitcoin. So, we've got the potential to build a point of sale experience. I mean, this is going to end up sounding kind of similar to Apple Pay, right? But you could walk into a shop and touch your phone to a terminal and make a payment directly there. The reason that Bitcoin is going to be inherently better than something like Apple Pay in that scenario is that with the current credit card network, right, they're still taking a 3% cut from the merchant.
Right.
And Apple Pay are putting on an extra, whatever they end up putting on, 0.25% or something on top of that as their fee. Bitcoin has close to no fees, and there's no sort of ability for someone to scrape your Bitcoin number or something like that and steal money from you. So it can be considerably more secure and considerably cheaper for the merchant to accept.
Right. Well, it's just more efficient down to the price, right? Because the reason
exactly.
the transaction cost is so low is because that's the minimum. That's all that's needed to make the system work. Whereas
exactly.
Apple is actually trying to profit from this.
Right. Exactly. And Bitcoin itself. Yeah. So there's definitely room for a company to come in there and make a really great experience for merchants, right? I guess the equivalent of Square, where they can just get some free little app on their phone and instantly they can accept Bitcoin. And hey, it's 3% cheaper than taking credit cards, and they don't have to worry about chargebacks or fraud or any of this stuff that comes with credit cards. But right now, that hasn't been built, so that's really interesting.
So if somebody watching builds that using the Coinbase API,
right,
how do they get you guys to feature them?
They can just call us.
What's the phone
Talk
number?
to our I don't know off the top of my head.
But is there a way? Is there an email or
Yeah, totally. I mean, the beauty of Bitcoin is that they wouldn't even need to build that on top of Coinbase, right? They could build that on top of. They could just build that as a Bitcoin application because anyone that's in the Bitcoin network is interoperable, and I guess so. It's kind of more similar to email or something in that regard. In that, I can have a Gmail account, you can have a Hotmail account, she can have a Yahoo account. We can all talk to each other. And it's not this, instead of a walled garden like Facebook messages or something, it's this open system where everyone can participate. So people can go out there and create a Bitcoin company and they don't need approval from anyone. They don't need approval from us. They don't need approval from a bank or a government or anything like that. They can just start one up. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely also opportunities to integrate with the Coinbase API. So if you're going to do something like that, you could say, hey, Coinbase people can, just install this app and tap their phone. But on the merchant side of things, go out there and start a company, and you don't even need, us to give you a blessing.
Yeah. What are you guys waiting for? Come on.
Yeah,
why are you watching this video?
Yeah.
Go start a company.
And there's tons of other sort of applications as well. Like I mentioned ATMs before. Traveling internationally right now is equally painful. Pretty much every time you swipe your credit card, you're losing 2 or 3% currency exchange fees to Visa or MasterCard. If you go to an ATM, it's even worse, right? Yep. But with Bitcoin, if you're storing some money in your Bitcoin account, you can go to any Bitcoin ATM run by anyone in the world and withdraw that money into the local currency. So I think it's already going to be considerably easier to travel if you've got Bitcoin to just go and, a lot of people will start accepting Bitcoin immediately, but if they don't, you can just go to the nearest Bitcoin ATM and pull out some money for free. And likewise with remittance, so people sending money from one country to another, people who are perhaps working in the States but have family back home and want to send money to those family. Right now they're using, these bank systems and, spending up to 10% of the value of the money that they're sending, just to convert it into their local currency and let someone pull it out at a little stand somewhere.
And that's specifically taken away from probably their family eating.
Exactly, right? I mean, like, you took this money and you said, hey, I want to send this to my family back home. And the bank said, well, thank you. Sorry, that's an international transaction. I don't know why you thought that they should get the whole amount.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, we're a bank. We're going to take it. Yeah. So.
Do you know how far away the other side of the world is?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and this is a really similar scenario, I guess, that we were in the 80s with post or something like that, right? So you want to send a letter to the other side of the world. It's like, cool. I hope you've got 3 weeks.
Right.
You want to send a parcel to the other world. Cool. I hope you've got like $300. Whereas nowadays, I mean, maybe not so much for parcels, but for email at least and letters, you just send them an email and it's free and it's instant and they get it.
That'd be crazy if that's not how email worked. Like if banks ran email, email would be so expensive suddenly. It'd be like, oh, you're emailing this person or, like in China?
Yeah,
well,
it's like, it's fine if you're going to email the same country, but you want to email China? No,
yeah, local
happening.
emails. You know, if you're going to email within your own like city, like we won't charge you that much.
Yeah, but realistically, that's what the banks are like now, right? It's like you want to send some money to your friend who uses the same bank as you. That's fine. It's free. It's instant, and it works. Oh, they've got a different bank? Oh, that's too bad. You're going to have to wait a week or write them a check or something. Here, they can take this.
Or pay us more money.
Yeah, just because.
Because we like money.
Yeah, because of money.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for giving us your insights on Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This was awesome.
Great.
I'm sure everybody learned a lot. I know I did.
Yeah, and get out there and start a Bitcoin company.
Do it now. Awesome. All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.